actually don't usually use slides. I don't think I've had any slides and I sent to. They're not going to be up here, and that's fine. I'll try and describe what they might look like. Every time I get up in front of a group like this, it makes me really emotional. Because it's such an honor to me to have the opportunity to help shape the way we provide care in this amazing, massive county with so much need, so much resource. It's really an honor to have your attention, and I thank you. I thank all the organizers for putting this together. When I think about mental illness, I think about trauma. Trauma is the binding feature of those who suffer, and that trauma can be direct. It can be in utero from exposure, it can be growing up in substandard conditions, it can be exposed to difficult interpersonal dynamics. And it can also be what we call secondary. It can be having to provide care and support and love for those who are suffering. And Nami, which is an amazing, amazing organization that has been developing over decades, is really all about that. It's all about figuring out ways to support the family, the household, the unit that we all depend upon, and so many of us do not have, especially those who become isolated by severe mental illness. With that said, I present my first slide, which is my well-being slide. Those of you who have known me, mostly in my work with veterans in the military communities, know that I talk about well-being. And just for argument's sake, I distinguish well-being from wellness. And maybe semantic, but I do want to explain before I go a little further what I mean. Wellness is a wonderful thing, and it really is an absence of illness. So wellness really is a concept that fits within the healthcare domain. But there's so much more than wellness. There's a comfortable place to live. There's the love of family. There's the importance of work and purpose and belonging. So when I talk about well-being, I talk about what our aspiration is, our goal for every person on this planet, certainly in LA County. Our goal is to help folks establish well-being across the dimensions of their life. And the slide that you would be seeing, and you will see someday, because I made it a while ago, and I'm breaking it out and doing some CPR on some of my old slides. In the middle really shows an image of an individual, an organism that is got both a nature and a nurture component. It is fed by a number of different resources across what we would call the continuum of health and human services. It flows through a compass. That compass is really a symbol for navigation and access, because it's so critical for us to develop systems in order to get the resources to the people and the right resources at the right time. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge if you're in great shape, but it's super difficult if you're not in great shape, and God forbid if you're totally isolated, like many of the folks that we really are focusing on. It's surrounded, this organism, who is flourishing because he or she has access to all of these resources which are being brought through a compass by what I would call the 6 dimensions of being. And is this working? And on the left side, really, I like to talk about independence. I like to talk about the dimensions of well-being that allow someone to be independent. And those really are emotional, physical, and intellectual. So if you have capacity, you have identity in all three of those dimensions, you can be independent, which is critical. And when I think of recovery, and I think personal recovery, I think every person, maybe after I describe it, you're gonna see it. Every person needs those assets in order to be effective as an agent on the planet. On the other side of this slide, I have what I would call connectedness. Connectedness really something that is framed around relationship to family and kin, relationship to society and the communities of life, and relationship to the cosmos. We often talk about it, spirituality. So when an individual is connected in those dimensions, and an individual is independent, they have a chance to flourish. I try to describe this to psychiatrists. I am a psychiatrist. I actually also used to be a neuroscientist, which surprises me sometimes. And it really kind of floors my answer back from grad school to this day. But I try to talk to psychiatrists, and I'm sure there's some in the room, and again, I am one, so I can say what I want about psychiatrists. I'm always asked, well, Dr. Sherin, what's the right medication? What's the right dosage? What are the right combinations? What about this new agent? Those are really important things, no question about it. And they're really, really important for those who have persistent profound mental illness who can respond, become more functional. But if we're not asking about the rest of the dimensions of well-being, we are missing the boat, big time.
Yep.
We need to know that when we're trying to help. Oh, that's sacred interface. So the slide before that is going to be what I'm describing right now. So I just put that out there because, I'm a well-being guy. I'm a not languish and let's flourish guy, and my approach to this department and to care is really about looking broadly at the spectrum of opportunities, services, resources that folks need, trying to get them connected. And that doesn't mean through DMH, it means through DMH and the rest of our county departments. It means cities, it means the public and the private sector, local, state, federal, all of these different resource streams need to be put together in a way that can help provide a platform for folks to flourish. Well, there he is. And you will be seeing this, and I'd like to send it out. We're actually working on, is that in focus or is that my age?
It's way out of focus. You want everything. You want the slides, you want the projection.
Yeah, no, I'm very,
You want focus.
But I'm actually, as I age and work harder than I ever have, and surf a lot less than I used to, and have to read the copious amounts of information, my eyes are suffering. So why don't we move to the next slide?
Okay.
This next slide really, which I call the sacred interface slide, I think is an important one. I think it's really relevant for this group. And really, the fact of the matter is that the interface between an individual and the resource is sacred. That's where healing occurs. And everything that we do in this department, everything we do in the health and human service industry needs to enrich that space. And that's just not always the case. A lot of what happens in that trench feeds bureaucracy, it feeds politics. And what we need to do is set up intentionally systems that allow us to know what's going on in the trench, what an individual requires in their life, what our provider needs as their tools to improve the amount of healing and the number of folks that we can affect. So what I've done is I've really just put together this simple diagram that shows what I'm working on. I'm working on it, if you talk about on the right side, I'm working very hard in the department to open up channels. I'm placing stints in the department so that there's information flow, so that we know what's going on at the executive level to drive our decision making. And I'm doing that in terms of the way that our managers are communicating with each other and the way that they're communicating with those folks who are providing care. I'm also, myself, going out into the trench to see what's going on for myself in that interface. In fact, I'm about to embark on what I call the SAC tour. So the SAC, the Service Area Advisory Councils, really are out in the field. And as I understand it, collecting information from the trenches about what's going on a regular basis. And I'm going to be going out myself to all 8 of them, because there are 8 service areas. And in advance of going, I'm asking that SAC to select the clinic that I can visit. And I'm gonna visit the clinic, and I'm gonna visit with consumers, and I'm gonna visit with frontline providers. I have plenty of time meeting with, management folks and supervisors. I want to talk to the trenches. I want to talk to the providers about what's going on, because I want to help them. I want to empower them to serve people. On the other side, I showed up, and there's all these acronyms, and there's all these, groups, and they're all wonderful, wonderful ways for us to connect with what's going on. But it's too much. There's too many voices. There's too many things coming at me for me to be able to kind of collect the information and translate it into priorities and directions, programming. So I'm trying very hard to set up an intentional relationship with the trenches, the consumers, the advocacy groups, the coalitions, and the SACs, and the service leadership, the systems leadership team, which helps advise us on a number of things, including our MHSA money and deployment, and the commission, so that we can get aligned and we can row in the same direction about the most important items. And I'm also trying to set it up so that there are iterative processes at the trench level, so that decisions that can be made locally are made locally in a way where we maintain fidelity with the trenches. So I don't know if that makes sense to you all. To me, it's a pretty simple concept. Putting it together is very challenging, and I think it will probably, in many ways, simplify the process over time, but it may disrupt certain things that exist. And all I can tell you is that if it's disrupting existing relationships, it's only in the interest of improving the channels of communication and the access to data that we get to make decisions, and the ease with which we use that data to influence how we deploy our resources to help people heal. How much time do I have, Brittany? I'm done. I'm glad I asked. All right, so I got the hook. I do want to say that, with respect to everything I'm describing, those who are homeless, so whether they're in the streets, with mental illness, whether they're in the streets or in the prisons or in the jails, or in the hospitals and the emergency departments, or in the child welfare system, unstably, those are all folks who have no home. They have no place to live. They don't have access to services, and they don't have family and kinship. There's a massive opportunity to influence that, and I want to educate you on the fact that this Measure H is about services. We need to have the services, the resources for folks that are going to get housed, and I'm educating you and not lobbying you. But that's a very important thing for us to do the work that we need to do. Again, I thank you for your attention. It's really an honor to be here.